So let's start with the obvious. It's no secret that denominational churches are having to close their doors. And they're having to close their doors after many decades of faithful and at times very fruitful ministry and witness. It's extremely worrying and it's very sad that in this day and age, churches are having to close. Now, I'm sure these churches had small but faithful, group of members who attended and give financially. Something like we do here in Clevendora, a small group, but a group that is faithful and a group that comes to their churches. But sadly, in the days that we live in today, in a lot of cases, that just isn't enough. It's not enough because we're now living in times where people are using the church. People are using the church like a social club, where they pop in and they pop out. They come out of tradition, or they come out of habit. They give very little, whether that be financial or whether that be in helping. But yet they're happy to voice their opinions. Church attendance today is sporadic at best. And people are happy to put so many other things on their calendars for Sundays. It used to be that Sundays were a day when we went to church. And don't forget, it used to be morning and night time. Don't forget, before COVID, we had 2 services on a day. And now we can't get people to come out once on a Sunday. You see, church is now competing with football and other sports. It's competing with shopping, and it's competing with more employers making their staff work. It's competing with so many other things than what it used to. And sadly, weekly attendance and the importance of tithing doesn't seem to be high on people's lists of priority. Now, I'm honest enough to say it like it is. I don't mean offence to anybody, but I'm honest enough to say it like it is. And I'm aware that the church has a lot to answer for. There's been so many scandals, so many mistakes made over the years that hasn't helped the cause of the church whatsoever. And I've spoken to many people over the years that have been hurt. They've been let down by the church and let down by others who have never felt, and I've heard about others who've never felt welcome in our churches. I remember bringing an alcoholic to a church in Portadown one night. And after about 2.5 minutes of sitting in the pews, we had to leave because he felt so uncomfortable. Because of the looks that he was getting. Because of the gossiping that was going on among the other pews. And these things and other things as well have led people to believe that they're better off without church. People believe that we are hypocrites that go to church. The majority of people living today think they don't need God in their lives. Let's be honest. They don't need God. They think they can go through life without God. Many people see church going as, us goers as hypocrites. And if they're honest, there is a bit of truth in that. You see, together, church goers and Christians, we've let God down. We've not painted God or the church in the right colours. But all that can change. I want you to know that I detest having to stand here and saying all this. I take no pleasure whatsoever in having to do this. But I really believe that we have no other choice. I believe we need to call a spade a spade. I believe that ministers, and if you're listening online, we need to get real. And we need to start preaching what's real from our pulpits. Preaching what we see Not what we just believe, but also what we see. And if we want to see our circuit remain as it is, if we want to see our churches stay open, if we want to see Methodist churches in this area continue to preach the Word of God for the years and years and years to come, then we have to be honest with each other. And we have to start being faithful to the church and faithful to God. Do you know, the days are gone when we bury our heads in the sand, where we think it's going to be okay. And I can't stand here and shy away from the real issues and concerns which we are facing today as a circuit, but also as a church. Our attendances have been dropping for months, maybe for years. And we need to address it, or we'll sadly see our churches padlocked. And that's the truth. With attendances dropping, so's our giving. And we need both to improve and to increase immediately. And you know that we have met as leaders in this last couple of weeks. And we are playing our part in trying to address the concerns. But we need everyone to play their part. We need to get people back to church. And we need to try and attract new people also. So the million-dollar question, how do we do this? I said earlier, we're sending out letters, we're having back to church services, we're coming together to have a gift day, and we're doing more sponsored events. But much, much more is needed to address the decline. But you know, it's not all doom and gloom. Thankfully, when we look at the Bible, we get inspiration. There are times where we turn to the Bible for inspiration and help. So let's do that. In our reading that I read to you from Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47, we get this fascinating look at some of the benefits that the early church members got from being in community with one another. And all those benefits still apply to us today. Let's briefly look at 3 characteristics that we get to share as Christians and as churchgoers. Firstly, these early Christians had a front row seat into the apostles' teaching. Think about it. Everything that Jesus had said and done was being passed on to the early church by the 12 disciples, and by their testimony and their eyewitness accounts. Now, can you imagine how exciting and inspiring that would have been to these new Christians who had accepted Jesus at Pentecost? So just before us in our reading, Peter has spoken that great address to the crowd, and we are told that over 3,000 people were saved on the one day at Pentecost. These new Christians now get to listen to the disciples give an eyewitness account of what Jesus did over the years before they met him. And all those stories and all those rumours that they had heard about Jesus were now being confirmed by eyewitnesses, people that spent most of their days in Jesus' presence. No wonder the church was growing daily. It was growing daily. So if that's the case, why is our church declining today? We have the same accounts. Their church was growing daily, and ours is declining daily. And yet we have the same accounts. We get to read the same accounts that they got to hear. So all the stories that they were telling the early church are all written down in the Bible. We get to read them. So we get the exact same as what they get. And in fact, we have so much more than what they ever had, the early church. We have all the knowledge and insight into Jesus through the Bible, with artifacts, with tradition, with reason, with experience, and so much more to add in. This isn't just one eyewitness account telling you a story. It's all collected. It's all collected in the Bible that we get to read. And we're not even persecuted by reading it. And yet in countries around the world where our Christian brothers and sisters are dying every day, horrible deaths, because they want to read the Bible, we don't read ours. And we live in a country where you can go to the main street in Castledare and read it, and no one will say boo. The second characteristic they shared as early Christians was fellowship. They shared fellowship. We are told in verse 44 that all believers were together and they had everything in common. All believers. Notice that word all. Because I said to you there was 3,000 people saved at Pentecost. So when you add them to the equation, it cancels out a lot of the responses or the excuses that we hear in our churches today where people feel left out or excluded. We hear this about the Lord's churches. When I went and there was 200 people and I just didn't feel welcome. I couldn't feel part of it. Here's over 3,000 people and they're all getting the same treatment. They're all getting the same treatment. The early church found a way to make sure that everybody felt welcome, that everyone was treated equally, and that they were loved and they were valued. And many people here today doesn't want to be loved or valued. Come on, we all do. We all want to be respected and loved and valued. And if we can't get that in our churches, my goodness, why are they empty? And this is something that the church today needs to hear. And I hope people's listening online because they need to hear it. And we need to start to respond today. In a lot of cases, people don't feel welcome. They don't feel included in our churches. And that needs to change before it's too late. So how did the early church achieve this? Look at verse 45. And this amazes me. It challenges me, and it should challenge you also. We're told that they sold their property. They sold all their possessions. And they gave it to anyone who had a need. Folks, that's a wow moment. That's a moment that should blow your mind. They weren't throwing £1 or £2 or £5 on that collection plate once every month when we could be bothered going to church. They sold their property and their possessions to make sure that all people had what they needed. And their fellowship didn't even end there. Look at verse 46. It tells us that they continued to meet together in the temple courts and they ate together in each other's homes. So what did their fellowship consist of? It consisted of including everybody, selling property and their possessions to provide for those in need, and they met together daily and shared meals together. So how is the same church today, the exact same church, how has it got to a place where members maybe show up once a month and tithe very little? How have we got to that place? I'm at a loss. Where the early church sold their property and their possessions to make sure everybody had what they needed. And don't forget what it says in verse 47. The Lord added to their number those who were being saved. When? Daily. Every day. It's easy to see where we are going wrong. And it's easy to see why the church is struggling today. The third and final characteristic they shared was that they prayed together. They prayed together at the temple daily. And I'm sure they would have prayed together in each other's homes when they were there also. And what was the result of the early Christians exercising all those characteristics on a regular basis? Well, I've just told you the answer. Verse 47, the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Not just extra people that were looking hangers-on, that was looking benefits. Not just people that was turning up because they heard that they were selling possessions and selling their houses and they were giving away to the poor. No. People were being saved every single day. And I want to tell us today, and I really want you to hear this today, a healthy church and a Christian community attracts people to Christ. And the early church's zeal for worship and brotherly love was contagious. It spread like wildfire. A healthy, loving church will grow in numbers, not decline. A healthy, loving church will grow in numbers. Church is much more than just a Sunday commitment. It's a part of the outworking of our salvation, our unity with people who are nothing like us. But that unity shows how deep and wide and how transformative God's grace really is. When misfits like all of us can come together and be one, it shows you how powerful our God really is. And living in that sort of unity, it's not easy. We know it's not easy. But it's powerful. So today I want to finish with a question, but also a challenge to each one of us, myself included. I want you to really think about this question, not just for the next minute before we sing our closing hymn, but as the week goes on, I want you to think about this. What are you doing? Not the person sitting beside you, not your mum or your dad or your brother or sister. What are you doing to make your church that kind of place that will attract others to Christ? What part are you playing in making Kevindora a place where others come because they're attracted to Christ? Amen.